The prophecy tablet cracked beneath Willow Nash's trembling fingers, ancient stones splintering as visions flooded her consciousness, 1,000 possible futures collapsing into one horrifying certainty. Her own face crowned in darkness, standing beside a throne of bones. She gasped and stumbled backward in the university's underground archives, dropping the relic as though it had burned her. Around her, dust motes swirled in the dim fluorescent lighting, utterly mundane compared to what she'd just witnessed. Prophecy reading wasn't supposed to work like this. As a graduate student in historical antiquities, she'd studied dozens of supposed oracle stones, all of them frauds or wishful thinking crystallized by ancient civilizations desperate for certainty. But this one had been different. The moment her skin touched its surface, power had surged through her veins like liquid fire, dragging her consciousness forward through time itself. She'd seen wars and coronations, blood and silver, and at the center of it all herself, not as she was now, 23 and perpetually exhausted from too many research hours, but transformed, ethereal, terrifying, standing beside someone whose face she couldn't quite see, but whose presence had made her soul recognize something fundamental and irrevocable. "Professor Chen is going to kill me," she whispered to the empty room, staring at the fractured tablet. The stone had been on loan from a private collection, supposedly a ceremonial piece from an extinct European cult. Nothing that should have actual power, nothing that should have shown her. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. Willow's heart hammered against her ribs as darkness swallowed the archive. Her phone was upstairs in her office. The archive's heavy door required a key card she'd left on the main desk. And now, in the absolute blackness, she heard something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, impossibly quiet, yet somehow audible over the building's ambient hum that had just gone silent. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked embarrassingly. "The building's closed. You touch the seeing stone of Valdivius." The voice that interrupted her was male, cultured, with an accent she couldn't place, something old European but refined beyond any modern dialect. "I felt it the moment the vision took you. Tell me, little prophet, what did you see?" Willow's eyes were adjusting slowly to the dark. She could make out a silhouette now, tall and lean, standing between her and the only exit. "I don't know what you're talking about. That's just a ceremonial artifact. It doesn't actually lie to someone who cannot hear your heartbeat accelerating." The figure moved closer, and Willow caught her first real glimpse of him as ambient city light from a high window touched his features. Her breath stopped entirely. He was beautiful in a way that seemed almost offensive to human sensibilities. White hair fell past his shoulders, gleaming like starlight even in the darkness. His skin was pale as marble, flawless and luminous. High cheekbones, a sharp jaw, lips that curved with predatory amusement. But his eyes, they were crimson, bright as fresh blood, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel utterly transparent. "You're—" The word caught in her throat. Impossible, fictional, dead mythology. "Draeven Theron Corvinus," he said, inclining his head in a gesture too formal for the modern world. "King of the northern bloodlines, lord of the eternal court, first son of the ancient dark." He paused, and something dangerous flickered across his perfect features. "And you, Willow Nash, have just seen something that belongs to me. My future. So I'll ask once more, what did the stone show you?" She should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to bolt, but her legs wouldn't obey, rooted to the floor as he moved closer still. He was dressed in black, expensive clothes that looked both modern and timeless, tailored to emphasize the lean power of his frame. No monster from a horror film. He looked like dark royalty, and moved like something that had never known fear. "I saw," Willow's voice shook. "I saw me, just my face. I don't understand what it means." His eyes narrowed. "Impossible. The Valdivius stone shows futures, not reflections. It would show you what lies ahead for whoever's bloodline commands it. Since I am the last of my line, it should show my future. Unless—" He went very still, studying her with new intensity. "Unless you are somehow bound to that future. Bound to me." "I'm not bound to anything," Willow managed, finding her voice. "I'm a graduate student. I study old rocks and dead civilizations. I don't even believe in," she gestured helplessly at him, "in any of this. Your belief is irrelevant to reality." Draven reached past her, so close she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin, and retrieved the broken tablet. His expression darkened. "You shattered it. Do you have any idea what you've done? It was an accident. This stone was forged in the 1st century by the greatest seer my kind ever turned. It has survived millennia, and you, in your mortal clumsiness, have destroyed in seconds what wars could not break." He turned the pieces over in his hands, and Willow saw something unexpected flash across his face, not anger, but something closer to concern. "The vision it showed you before it broke, that is now the only prophecy we have. Everything else is lost." Willow's mind raced. Vampires were real. This vampire was apparently royalty, and she'd just broken his priceless magical artifact and somehow inserted herself into his destiny. "Look, I'm sorry about the stone, but I didn't ask for any of this. I was just cataloging donations. Maybe if you tell me more about what the prophecy was supposed to reveal, You can do nothing," Draven said flatly, "except come with me. Now." "Absolutely not." His crimson eyes locked onto hers, and she felt the weight of centuries in that gaze. "This is not a request. If you are truly woven into my future as the stone suggests, then you are now the most valuable piece on a board you don't even know exists. Every vampire court in the world will be hunting for advantages, for prophecies, for any edge in the power struggles that are coming. When they learn that a human woman saw the Valdivius prophecy before it shattered, they won't learn anything because I won't tell anyone. Your blood will tell them everything they need to know. There are ways to extract memories from mortal minds, painful ways. The only thing keeping you alive right now is that you are under my protection." He said it with absolute certainty, as though her survival was now his personal decree. "So you will come with me to my court, you will remain under guard, and you will help me understand what this prophecy means. After that, if you still wish to return to your mundane little life, we can discuss terms." Willow's hands clenched into fists. "You can't just kidnap me because I accidentally broke your magic rock. I am a king. I can do precisely what I deem necessary." But then his expression shifted, something almost like understanding crossing his features. "However, I prefer willing cooperation to force. So let me be clear about your options. You can come with me now, to a place where ancient wards and my personal power will keep you safe. Or you can refuse, return to your apartment, and wait approximately 6 to 8 hours before the first hunter finds you. They will not be as patient as I am. They will not care about your comfort. They will take what they need from you and discard the rest." The terrible thing was, looking into those blood-red eyes, Willow believed him. Everything rational in her brain screamed that this was insane, but the vision had felt real. The power in that stone had been real. And the predatory grace with which Draven moved, the casual certainty of his words, that was real too. "If I agree to go with you," she said slowly, "I want your word that you won't hurt me, that this protection you're offering is genuine." Something flickered in his expression, approval, maybe, or surprise. "You have my oath, given freely before witnesses old and new." He glanced around the empty archive with dark amusement. "I, Draeven Corvinus, king of the northern bloodlines, swear that no harm will come to Willow Nash under my protection. I will guard her life as I would my own kingdom, and no blood of hers will be spilled while she remains under my care." The words resonated with power, humming in the air between them. Willow felt them settle like a physical weight, a binding more real than any contract. "Fine," she whispered, "but I need to call my advisor. Tell her I'm taking emergency leave." "Already done. As far as the university is concerned, you've been granted a fully funded research opportunity abroad. Your rent will be paid, your obligations handled. When this is over, your life will be waiting." He extended one pale hand toward her. "Come." Willow stared at that offered hand, at the long fingers and the sense of leashed power in every line of him. This was the moment, the choice point. She could scream, fight, try to run, or she could step forward into a world she'd never believed existed, guided by a vampire king who claimed she was somehow essential to his future. The memory of the vision flickered through her mind, her own face, crowned and terrible and somehow right. She took his hand. His skin was cold as winter stone, but his grip was surprisingly gentle as he pulled her close. "Hold on," he murmured, and then the world dissolved into shadow and ice and the sensation of falling through frozen water. Willow bit back a scream as reality twisted around them, the archive disappearing, replaced by... They materialized in a grand hall that stole whatever breath she had left. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, carved from black stone and inlaid with silver veining that caught the light of hundreds of candles. Massive pillars lined the space, each one inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when she looked at them directly. At the far end stood a dais with an elaborate throne, all dark metal and sharp edges, beautiful and threatening in equal measure. And around the edges of the hall, emerging from alcoves and doorways, were more of them. More vampires. At least 20, all with that same ethereal beauty, that same predatory stillness. White hair, pale skin, eyes ranging from deep crimson to amber to one woman whose irises were black as void. All of them dressed in styles that suggested wealth and power, all of them watching Willow with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hunger. "My king." A male vampire stepped forward, tall and lean with military bearing and scars that stood out silver against his pale throat. "We felt the transit. This is Willow Nash," Draven said, his hand still wrapped around hers, proprietary and protective. "She touched the Valdivia stone and received its final prophecy before the artifact was destroyed. She is under my direct protection, and anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Spread the word to every bloodline she is not to be touched." Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. The scarred one frowned. "My king, bringing a human here, into the heart of the court. Is my decision, Cassius, and not open for debate." Draven's voice held absolute authority. "Prepare the East Wing guest chambers, post guards, and send word to the council that we convene at moonrise tomorrow. We have much to discuss." Cassius bowed, though his expression remained troubled. The other vampires began to disperse, though Willow could feel their eyes on her, assessing, calculating. She forced herself to stand straight, to not show the fear coursing through her veins. Draven led her through a maze of corridors, each one more opulent than the last. Tapestries that looked centuries old hung beside modern art. Gas lamps existed alongside electric lights. It was as though multiple eras had been frozen and preserved here, creating something outside normal time. "Where are we?" she finally asked. "Geographically, I mean." "Beneath Manhattan. My court has existed here for 300 years, long before the city above was anything more than scattered settlements. We built deep, and we built to last." He glanced at her. "You're handling this remarkably well." "I'm compartmentalizing. There'll probably be a panic attack later." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Honest. I appreciate that more than you know. Most mortals either faint or attempt to bargain." "Would bargaining work?" "No." They reached a set of ornate doors that swung open at Draven's approach. The chamber beyond was stunning, a bedroom easily the size of Willow's entire apartment, with a canopied bed draped in dark silk, antique furniture, bookshelves lining one wall, and tall windows that showed not sky but what looked like an underground garden, bioluminescent plants glowing soft blue in cultivated darkness. "This is yours while you remain here," Draven said. "The wards on this room are among the strongest in the court. Nothing can enter without my permission. You'll find clothes in the wardrobe, all your size." At her look, he added, "I'm efficient." "This is insane," Willow said quietly, but she walked inside, drawn despite herself to the books. History texts, mythology, and she pulled one out in surprise, a recent best-selling fantasy novel. "You read contemporary fiction?" "I find it amusing how mortals imagine us, sometimes flattering, usually inaccurate." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her with those unsettling crimson eyes. "Rest. Eat if you wish, there's food in the adjoining room, all of it human appropriate. Tomorrow we'll begin attempting to understand what the stone showed you. And then? Then we determine whether you saw a future to prevent or one to pursue." His gaze intensified. "Tell me true when you saw yourself in that vision. Did you seem afraid?" Willow thought back to that moment, to the crowned figure wearing her face. "No," she admitted. "I looked powerful, like I belonged there." Draven nodded slowly, something complicated crossing his expression. "That," he said softly, "is what concerns me most. Sleep well, Willow Nash. Tomorrow, everything changes." He left, the doors closing with a whisper of sound, and Willow stood alone in a vampire king's guest chamber beneath the streets of New York City, wondering how her life had transformed from term papers and coffee to prophecies and immortal courts in the span of a single evening. She didn't sleep well. How could she? But exhaustion eventually claimed her, and when she woke, soft light was emanating from crystal fixtures overhead, suggesting day, though no real sun could reach this deep. A tray of breakfast foods waited on a nearby table, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled divine. A note in elegant handwriting read, "When you're ready. No rush. D." Willow ate mechanically, then explored the wardrobe. True to his word, it held clothes in her exact size, ranging from practical modern wear to elaborate gowns that looked like they belonged in a period drama. She chose jeans and a simple sweater, needing something normal to ground her. A knock came at the door. "Miss Nash?" A female voice, accented and surprisingly warm. "I'm Seraphine. His Majesty asked me to attend you when you woke." Willow opened the door to find a vampire woman who looked barely older than herself, with white hair braided in an intricate crown and eyes the color of aged whiskey. She wore modern clothes, slacks, and a silk blouse, and her smile seemed genuine. "I know this must be overwhelming," Seraphine said. "I was turned relatively recently, only 80 years ago, so I remember what it's like to learn that everything you thought you knew about the world was wrong. May I come in?" Willow stepped back, allowing her entry. 80 years is recent? When you're standing beside vampires who remember the fall of Rome, yes. Seraphine settled gracefully into a chair. "I've been asked to help orient you to court life, answer questions, serve as a friendly face, also to make sure you don't accidentally offend anyone powerful enough to cause problems. Is that likely?" "Vampires are territorial and proud. We have rules older than nations, and breaking them can have consequences. But with Draven's protection, you're safer than you'd be anywhere else in either world." Seraphine tilted her head, studying Willow. "He's taking a risk, you know, bringing a human into court, claiming you as essential to his future. It shows vulnerability. Some will see that as weakness." "He didn't give me much choice." "Didn't he?" Seraphine's knowing look made Willow uncomfortable. "I've served the king for decades. I've never seen him use force against someone innocent. Persuasion, manipulation, strategic truth-telling, yes. But he gave you a choice, even if all the options were terrible. That means something." Before Willow could respond, another knock sounded. Cassius, the scarred vampire from last night, stood in the doorway. "The king requests your presence in the East Library. There are others who wish to understand what you saw." The library was breathtaking, 3 stories of books spiraling upward around a central atrium, connected by wrought iron staircases. Draven stood beside a large table covered in old texts and artifacts, speaking with a female vampire whose white hair was shot through with veins of black and whose eyes held the weariness of extreme age. "Ah, our prophet arrives." The ancient vampire's voice was surprisingly light. "I am Valentina, keeper of histories and the king's most trusted advisor. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Willow took the offered seat, acutely aware of being the only living thing in the room. Draven settled across from her, his presence somehow both reassuring and dangerous. "The Valdivia stone," Valentina began, "was created by a seer named Marcus, whom Draven's ancestor turned in the year 79 AD. Marcus was already gifted with foresight. The transformation amplified his abilities 1,000-fold. He forged that stone as a tool for the Corvinus bloodline, keying it specifically to show futures that would impact their reign. So when I touched it—" "You should have seen nothing," Draven interrupted. The stone responds only to Corvinus blood or to those blood bonded to the line. The fact that it activated for you at all suggests a connection that should not exist. Willow's mind raced. I'm not a vampire. I've never even met one before last night, as far as I know. How could I be connected to your bloodline? That, Valentina said softly, is the question that may determine the fate of our entire court. Tell us exactly what you saw, every detail, no matter how small. Willow closed her eyes, pulling the memory forward. It was fast, like flipping through pages too quickly to read individual words, but the images that stuck were vivid. I saw battles vampires fighting each other, not humans. I saw a great hall on fire. I saw alliances forming and breaking, and at the center of it all, I saw myself. Older, maybe, or just different. I was wearing a crown made of dark metal and silver thorns. I stood beside a throne, and there was someone sitting in it, but I couldn't see their face. The feeling I got was she struggled for words. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, like everything had led to that moment. Silence fell over the library. Draven and Valentina exchanged weighted looks. That crown, Draven said carefully, is real. It exists in our vaults, forged for the queen consort of the northern bloodlines. It has not been worn in 600 years, not since your mother was executed for treason, Valentina finished quietly. Since then, you have ruled alone, refusing all suggestions of taking a consort. You've said repeatedly that you would never put someone in that position, never create the vulnerability that destroyed your family. Draven's expression had gone cold and distant. I won't. And yet the prophecy shows otherwise. Valentina turned to Willow. Child, do you understand what you've seen? Not just alliance or partnership. That crown means bonding. It means claiming. For a human to wear it, they would need to be turned, brought into the bloodline permanently. Willow's heart hammered. That's not I don't want to be a vampire. I barely want to be here at all. There must be some mistake. The Valdivia stone does not make mistakes, Draven said, but his tone was softer now, almost regretful. But prophecies are not commands. They show possible futures, not inevitable ones. If this is a path we do not wish to walk, we can choose differently. Except, Cassius said from his position by the door, prophecies of this magnitude don't show trivial possibilities. They show crucial moments, turning points. If the stone's last vision before shattering was of Miss Nash crowned and standing beside our throne, then that future is somehow essential. The question is essential for whom? For us? Or for our enemies? Explain, Willow demanded. If she was part of this, she deserved to understand. Valentina began laying out old documents on the table. Vampire society is not unified. We are divided into courts and bloodlines, each with its own territory and power base. Draven rules the northern bloodlines, which includes most of North America and parts of Europe. But there are 4 other major courts: the Southern Dominion, the Eastern Empire, the Western Clans, and the Shadow Court, which exists outside geographical boundaries. For centuries, we've maintained a careful balance, but recently that balance has begun to fracture. The Shadow Court has been moving against us, Draven added. Small incursions, political maneuvering, attempts to sway my vassals. Their queen, Morgantha, is ancient and ambitious. She believes the modern world has made us weak, that we should return to the old ways, openly ruling over humans rather than existing in secret. And you disagree. I believe survival requires adaptation. Humanity has nuclear weapons, satellite surveillance, global communication. If we revealed ourselves, if we attempted conquest, we would start a war we couldn't win. Better to remain in shadow, to guide and influence from within. His crimson eyes met hers. But many vampires see that as cowardice. They long for the days when we were worshipped and feared. Willow processed this. So if Morgantha finds out about the prophecy, about me, she'll either try to claim you for herself or eliminate you to prevent the future the stone foretold. Draven's hands clenched on the table. Which is why you need to remain here, where I can protect you until we understand what this means. Or we could fulfill the prophecy, Valentina said quietly. If the stone showed Willow crowned and powerful, Perhaps that future is one where we're strong enough to defeat our enemies. Perhaps she's meant to be an advantage, not a liability. No, Draven's voice cracked like thunder. I won't force transformation on someone who doesn't want it. I won't create a consort through prophecy and political necessity. That path leads only to resentment and ruin. Even if it saves your kingdom, even then. Willow stared at him, this vampire king who held absolute power yet refused to use it, and felt something shift in her chest. He could command her transformation, could ensure the prophecy's fulfillment through sheer authority. But he wouldn't. His protection wasn't just physical, it extended to her choices, her autonomy. "Thank you," she said softly, "for that." His eyes met hers, and for a moment the room seemed to fall away. "You are not a chess piece, Willow Nash, no matter what the future holds." The moment broke as Seraphine appeared in the doorway, her expression urgent. "My king, we have visitors, envoys from the Shadow Court, requesting an audience under banner of truce." Draven cursed softly. "How many?" "3, led by Lord Thaddeus. Morgantha sends her attack dog." Draven stood, his entire demeanor shifting into something harder, more regal. "Willow, you'll remain in your chambers. Cassius, double the guard on her door. Valentina, with me. If Morgantha already knows about the prophecy, we'll learn how fast information travels in our world," Valentina finished grimly. They swept out, leaving Willow with Seraphine and a growing sense of dread. "How bad is this?" she asked. "Lord Thaddeus is old, cruel, and utterly loyal to Morgantha. He wouldn't come personally unless this was important." Seraphine guided her back toward the guest chambers. "The fact that he's requesting an audience rather than launching an attack means he wants something. Information, leverage, maybe you." "Draven won't hand me over." "No," Seraphine agreed, "which means the Shadow Court will have to decide whether you're worth going to war over, and if they decide yes—" She didn't finish the thought. Back in her chambers, Willow paced like a caged animal. Through the windows overlooking the underground garden, she could see vampire guards taking positions, their movements coordinated and military precise. Whatever was happening in the throne room, it had put the entire court on alert. Hours crawled past. Willow tried to read, to distract herself, but every sound in the corridor made her jump. Finally, as the crystal lights began to dim into artificial evening, her door opened. Draven stood there, and he looked furious. "We need to talk." He entered, dismissing the guards with a gesture, and began pacing her room like a predator in a cage. "Morgantha knows. I don't know how the stone shattered less than 24 hours ago, but she knows about the prophecy. Not the details, but enough. She knows a human woman saw my future in the Valdivius stone." "What did her envoy want?" "You. She's claiming that any prophecy affecting vampire leadership should be examined by all the courts, not hoarded by one bloodline. She's demanding I surrender you to neutral territory for proper assessment." His lip curled with disgust. "As if I would ever—" "You refused." "Of course I refused. You're under my protection, but it's forced my hand in ways I didn't anticipate." He stopped pacing, facing her directly. "Morgantha has called for a grand convocation, all 5 courts, gathering together for the first time in a century. She's framing this as a matter of vampire sovereignty, claiming I'm putting personal interest above the good of our kind by keeping you hidden." What happens at a convocation? Politics, posturing, and occasionally violence. The 5 rulers meet to address matters that affect all vampires. It's meant to prevent war, to solve conflicts through negotiation rather than bloodshed. But it also means I'll be required to bring you before the assembled courts, to explain the prophecy and prove I'm not using it to gain unfair advantage. His jaw clenched. You'll be examined, questioned, possibly subjected to truth magic or memory reading. It won't be pleasant. Willow sat down slowly, processing this. When? 3 days. Morgantha's already moving her court to the neutral ground in Prague. The others will follow. I have to go and I have to bring you. He knelt suddenly, bringing himself to eye level with her, and his expression was raw in a way she hadn't seen before. I'm sorry. I brought you into this to keep you safe, and instead, I've made you the center of a political firestorm. Not your fault. I touched the stone, and I didn't give you real choice about coming here. His hand reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her face, the first truly tender gesture he'd made. His skin was cold, but his touch was careful, reverent almost. I can still send you back, put you under guard in the human world, claim the prophecy was nothing important. Morgantha would know I'm lying, but she couldn't prove it. You'd be out of this. And you'd look weak before the other courts. They'd smell blood in the water. Better that than putting you in danger. Willow leaned into his touch before she could think better of it. When had this happened? When had she started feeling safe with him, trusting him? He was a vampire king, literally inhuman, yet something about his fierce protectiveness called to parts of her she hadn't known existed. What if the prophecy is right? She asked quietly. What if I'm supposed to be part of your future, your court? I saw myself crowned, Draven. I looked powerful and unafraid. Maybe that's who I'm meant to become. You don't know what you're saying. But his eyes held something like hope beneath the resistance. Transformation isn't reversible. You'd give up sunlight, mortality, everything human about your existence. And for what? A vision that might mean nothing? Or might mean everything. She caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. I'm not saying I want to be turned right now, but I'm also not running away. If there's a convocation, if I need to face the other courts, then that's what I'll do. We'll figure out what this prophecy means together. Something fierce and possessive flared in his crimson eyes. You're braver than you know. Or stupider. He almost smiled. Then, slowly, with the careful deliberation of someone handling something infinitely precious, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead. The kiss was chaste, gentle, but it sent electricity racing through her veins. I won't let them harm you, he murmured against her skin. I swear it on my blood and crown. Whatever happens in Prague, you'll be safe. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Seraphine became her constant companion, teaching her the intricacies of vampire court protocol. Willow learned how to bow to different ranks, which forms of address to use, how to navigate conversations laden with centuries of subtext. She learned that vampires communicated as much through posture and subtle gesture as through words, that showing fear was invitation for attack, that strength, even in a human, commanded a measure of respect. Valentina provided history lessons detailing the relationships between the courts. The Southern Dominion, ruled by a vampire named Isabella, controlled South America and parts of Africa. She was pragmatic and mercantile, caring more about trade and resources than ideology. The Eastern Empire, led by Emperor Zhao, was isolationist and ancient, rarely involving itself in Western affairs. The Western clans were a loose confederation ruled by a council rather than a single leader, chaotic but innovative. And then there was Morgantha's shadow court, existing in the spaces between, drawing in the dissatisfied and ambitious from every other bloodline. She'll try to turn you against Draven, Valentina warned. Morgantha is skilled at finding vulnerabilities, at offering exactly what someone desires most. She'll promise you power, safety, answers, anything to get you to betray him. I won't. See that you don't, because if the prophecy truly shows you as his consort, as the queen of the northern bloodlines, then you represent everything Morgantha wants. Proof that Draven can be swayed, that he's not as untouchable as he seems. She'll use you to weaken him if she can. The night before they left for Prague, Draven summoned Willow to his private chambers. She'd never been in this part of the court before. The royal wing was heavily guarded, off limits even to most vampires. But the guards stepped aside at her approach, recognizing her now as someone under the king's explicit protection. His chambers were austere compared to the opulence of the rest of the court. Dark stone walls, minimal furniture, shelves lined with books and artifacts that looked genuinely ancient. A massive window dominated one wall, showing the underground city that sprawled beneath Manhattan buildings carved from living rock, streets lit by bioluminescent cultivation, an entire civilization hidden from human eyes. Draeven stood at that window, his white hair loose around his shoulders, dressed in simple black. He looked younger like this, less regal and more real. Thank you for coming, he said without turning. I wanted to give you this before we leave. He held out a small object, a pendant on a silver chain. The centerpiece was a dark red gem that seemed to pulse with internal light. It's a bloodstone, he explained as she took it carefully, keyed to me specifically. As long as you wear it, I'll be able to sense where you are if you're in danger, and it will offer some protection against mental intrusion. Not perfect, but better than nothing. Willow fastened it around her neck. The stone was warm against her skin despite its master's cold nature. Thank you. There's something else. Now he did turn, and his expression was conflicted. At the convocation, they'll want to verify your claims. That means allowing a neutral party to read your memory of the prophecy. It's invasive and uncomfortable, but it's the only way to prove we're not fabricating this. Okay, you agree very easily, because I trust you. The words came out simple and true. A week ago, I didn't believe vampires existed. Now I'm standing in a hidden city beneath New York, about to fly to Prague to face immortal rulers at a supernatural political summit. If I can accept all that, I can handle having my memories read. Draeven crossed to her, moving with that inhuman grace that should have been frightening but had become almost familiar. You've adapted remarkably well to a world that should terrify you. Why? Willow considered the question seriously. Because it makes sense of things I've always felt were incomplete. I've studied history my entire life, looked at ancient cultures and their stories about gods and monsters, and there was always this sense that something was missing, that the myths were trying to tell us something real. Now I know they were. And you? She met his crimson eyes. You could have killed me, used me, treated me like a tool. Instead, you've protected me, given me choices, respected my autonomy. That's not what I expected from a monster. It's what I'd hoped for from a good man. I'm not a man, he said softly. I haven't been human for over 4 centuries. I've killed Willow. I've made decisions that cost lives, sacrificed pieces when necessary to save the whole. I am capable of terrible things when my kingdom demands it. But you're also capable of mercy, of kindness, of keeping oaths even when they complicate your political position. She reached up, daring to touch his face the way he'd touched hers days ago. His skin was marble, smooth and cold, but he leaned into her palm like he was starved for gentle contact. You're not what I expected. You're better. The kiss happened so naturally, she wasn't sure who initiated it. One moment they were standing close, her hand on his face and his eyes burning into hers. The next, his lips were on hers, cold and firm and demanding. Willow gasped, and his tongue swept in, claiming her mouth with a possessiveness that made heat pool low in her belly. His arms went around her, pulling her flush against him, and she could feel the lean strength in his frame, the barely restrained power. He kissed like he did everything else with absolute certainty and control, but also with a hunger that suggested the control was hard-won. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, or rather, she was breathing hard while he watched with predatory satisfaction, Willow's knees felt weak. That was, she started. Inevitable, he finished. I've wanted to do that since the moment you looked up at me in that archive and told me you didn't believe in vampires while your heart raced with fear and wonder. His thumb traced her lower lip. But this complicates things. The prophecy? Everything. If I claim you as mine, it's not a casual arrangement. Vampire bonds are absolute. I would be declaring to every court that you are under my protection not just politically, but personally. That an attack on you is an attack on me directly. Isn't that already true? This would be different, deeper. It would also tell Morgantha exactly how to hurt me. His jaw clenched. I've ruled for 200 years without taking a consort specifically to avoid creating that vulnerability. And now you're considering breaking that rule for a human you've known for 3 days. Willow couldn't help a slightly hysterical laugh. This is insane. Yes, but he was smiling, really smiling, and it transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. Completely insane. And yet I find I don't care. The prophecy showed you crowned and powerful. My instincts tell me you're meant to be here. And my heart, he paused as though the admission cost him. My heart hasn't felt anything this strong in longer than I can remember. Willow knew she should be cautious, should think this through rationally. But rationality had stopped applying the moment she'd touched that prophecy stone. So what do? We go to Prague. We face the convocation. We show them the prophecy and dare them to challenge it. His arms tightened around her. And then, if you still want this, if you're truly willing to enter my world, we make the prophecy real. On our terms, not fate's. She kissed him again in answer, pouring everything she felt into it, the fear and wonder and strange rightness of standing in his arms. When they finally separated, his eyes had darkened to deep crimson, almost black, and she could see the points of his fangs against his lower lip. "Careful," he murmured. "You're testing my control, and I've already decided you're too precious to risk." "Risk how?" "Feeding from someone creates a bond, temporary for most vampires, but for my bloodline, for kings, it's deeper. I could taste your memories, your emotions. You could feel my presence in your mind. It's intimate, beyond anything physical." His voice had gone rough. "And I want it. I want to know every part of you, to bind you to me in every way possible. But not until you understand fully what that means." Willow shivered, and not from fear. "After Prague?" "After Prague," he agreed. "When this is settled and you can choose freely, without political pressure or prophecy hanging over us. I want you to choose me, Willow. Not fate, not necessity, me." She stayed in his chambers until dawn, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his life before turning a minor noble in 17th century Hungary, caught up in a war he didn't believe in. About the vampire who'd found him dying on a battlefield and offered him a choice. About the centuries that followed, learning to navigate immortality while watching the mortal world change around him. She told him about her childhood, about losing her parents young and being raised by her grandmother who'd filled their house with books and stories. About choosing historical studies because she wanted to understand how the past shaped the present. About the loneliness of always feeling slightly out of step with her own time. As artificial dawn began to lighten the crystals overhead, Draven walked her back to her chambers. At her door, he kissed her once more, gentle and almost chaste. "Sleep," he commanded softly. "Tonight we travel, and tomorrow we face the courts. I need you rested and strong. Will you be okay? During the day, I mean. I'll rest as well. Older vampires can function in daylight if necessary, but it's draining. Better to sleep and face the evening at full strength." He touched the bloodstone at her throat. "If you need me, even during day sleep, this will wake me. Don't hesitate." Then he was gone, and Willow was left alone with her racing thoughts and the lingering taste of him on her lips. The flight to Prague was surreal. They didn't use commercial airlines, of course. Draven had a private jet, or rather, the Northern Bloodlines did, outfitted for vampire travel with blackout windows and climate control that kept the cabin cool enough for comfort. Willow was the only human aboard, accompanied by Draven, Valentina, Cassius, Seraphine, and a dozen other high-ranking vampires who would serve as the king's retinue at the convocation. They traveled at night, crossing time zones until arriving at a private airfield outside Prague in the early hours of the morning. From there, cars with blackened windows transported them into the city, but not to any hotel Willow recognized. Instead, they descended. Beneath Prague's historic streets lay another city, far older, carved from the bedrock by vampire hands over centuries. It made the Manhattan court look modern by comparison. Here, medieval architecture met ancient Roman design, connected by passages that predated both. This was neutral ground, maintained collectively by all 5 courts as a meeting place. The convocation would be held in the Chamber of Courts, a massive amphitheater at the city's heart. But first, each court had private quarters for their delegations. The Northern Bloodlines' residence was a palace of dark stone and stained glass, beautiful and cold. Draven settled Willow in chambers connected to his own, then gathered his advisors for strategy. Willow could hear their voices through the walls discussing contingencies, preparing arguments, anticipating Morgantha's moves. She should probably be terrified, but instead she felt oddly calm. Whatever came, they'd face it together. The first session of the convocation was called for the following evening. Seraphine helped Willow dress in a gown that Valentina had selected deep green velvet with silver embroidery, elegant but not ostentatious. The goal was to look like someone worthy of respect without appearing to claim status she hadn't earned. "You'll be presented to the assembled courts," Seraphine explained while arranging Willow's hair. Draven will speak first, explaining the situation. Then they'll call for verification of the prophecy. A neutral seer will read your memory of the vision. After that, she shrugged. After that, it becomes politics. Comforting. You'll do fine. Remember, show no fear, answer honestly, and don't let anyone bait you into emotional reactions. Vampires respect strength and composure. When Willow was ready, Draven came to collect her. He was dressed in formal court attire, black leather, and silk with silver accents, his white hair bound back, a circlet of dark metal resting on his brow. He looked every inch a king, powerful and remote, but his eyes softened when he saw her. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Are you ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." He offered his arm and she took it, letting him lead her through corridors filled with vampires from every court. She felt their eyes on her, assessing, calculating. The mortal girl who'd seen a prophecy, the human under the Northern King's protection, the potential future queen. The chamber of courts took her breath away. A vast circular space with tiered seating rising on all sides. The floor was polished black stone inlaid with silver symbols. At 5 points around the circle stood thrones, each unique to its court. The northern throne was dark metal and sharp edges, currently empty. Draven would stand, not sit, during the proceedings, a gesture of equality with the other rulers. The southern dominion's throne was carved from what looked like obsidian, occupied by Isabella, a vampire who appeared to be in her 30s, with white hair cut short and eyes like amber. She wore gold and crimson, every inch the merchant queen. The Eastern Empire's throne was lacquered wood and jade, and Emperor Zhao sat there like a statue, ancient beyond measure, his face unreadable. The Western clans had not one throne, but 3 smaller seats, occupied by their ruling council, 2 men and 1 woman, all looking restless and eager. And then there was Morgantha's throne, black crystal that seemed to drink in light, and seated upon it was the most terrifying vampire Willow had yet encountered. Morgantha looked young, perhaps 20 when she'd been turned, but her eyes were ancient, black as void, and filled with malevolent intelligence. Her white hair fell to the floor in a river of silk, and she wore a crown of blackened silver and thorns. When those void black eyes fixed on Willow, it took everything she had not to flinch. "Welcome, Draeven Corvinus," Morgantha's voice rang out, sweet and poisonous, "and welcome to your mortal pet. How gracious of you to finally share her with the rest of us." "Willow Nash is not a pet," Draven said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "She is a free woman who has witnessed a prophecy of significance. I've brought her here under banner of truce to present that vision to the assembled courts, as is my right and obligation." "So you claim." Morgantha leaned forward, her smile sharp. "Yet you've kept her hidden in your court for days. One wonders what other preparations you've made. Perhaps coaching her on what to say, fabricating a convenient prophecy to justify whatever political move you're planning." "I fabricate nothing," Draven said coldly. "The Valdivia stone activated for her touch showed her a vision and shattered. These are facts, not inventions." "Then you won't object to verification?" Isabella spoke up, her voice practical. "We've brought in Mistress Alara, a seer with no court affiliation. She can read the girl's memory and confirm whether this prophecy is genuine." An elderly vampire stepped forward, genuinely old, not just ancient in spirit. She looked frail, bent with age, her white hair thin and her eyes milky, but power radiated from her in waves. "I will see truth," Alara said, her voice cracking with age. "Bring the girl forward." Draven squeezed Willow's hand once, then released her. She walked into the center of the chamber alone, feeling hundreds of vampire eyes tracking her every movement. Alara approached, studying her with those cloudy eyes. "This will not hurt, child, but it will feel strange. Do not resist. Let me in." Cold fingers touched Willow's temples, and then the world tilted. She felt Alara's consciousness brush against hers, ancient and vast and utterly foreign. The seer rifled through her recent memories with surprising gentleness, the archive, the stone, the vision. The vision itself unspooled between them, clearer now than Willow's own memory. She saw it again through Alara's perception. The battles, the burning hall, and herself crowned and powerful, standing beside a throne. The seer lingered on that image, examining it from every angle. Then the presence withdrew, leaving Willow gasping. Alara turned to address the assembled courts. The prophecy is genuine. The Valdivius stone showed her a vision of herself crowned and standing beside the northern throne. The girl's memory has not been tampered with, nor has she been coached. What she saw is what the stone intended. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Draven's expression remained controlled, but Willow could see tension in his shoulders. "How fascinating," Morgantha purred. "So the stone shows a mortal girl wearing the crown of northern consort. And what do you make of this, Draven? Planning to take a human queen? How very progressive of you." "The prophecy shows a possibility, not a mandate," Draven replied. "What happens next is for Miss Nash and myself to determine, not the courts." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong." Morgantha stood, and the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. "A prophecy of this magnitude, showing the future of one of the 5 royal bloodlines, is a matter of collective concern. If you transform this human, if you make her your consort, it changes the balance of power. It suggests you're planning a dynasty, securing your bloodline's future. Some might see that as aggressive positioning. Or," Isabella interjected, "it could be seen as stabilizing. Draven has ruled alone for 2 centuries. Taking a consort would give him stake in the future, make him more invested in maintaining peace rather than risking war." "Unless the consort herself is the weapon," one of the Western clan leaders suggested. "A human-turned-vampire often retains unusual abilities. What if she's meant to be something more than decorative?" They were talking about her like she wasn't there, debating her future as though she had no say. Anger flared in Willow's chest. "Excuse me," she said loudly, and the chamber fell silent. Every vampire turned to stare. "I can hear you, and I'd appreciate being included in discussions about my own fate." Morgantha's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, she has spirit! How delightful! Very well, mortal. Tell us, do you want to be turned, to become one of us?" Willow looked at Draven, at his tense posture and guarded expression. Then she faced Morgantha directly. "I want to understand what I saw. The prophecy showed me powerful and unafraid, standing exactly where I needed to be. Whether that requires transformation or something else, I don't know yet. But I do know this: my choices are my own. Not yours, not the courts, not even Draven's. Mine." "Brave words," Morgantha said softly. "But bravery won't protect you from the consequences of this prophecy. You've become a piece on a board you don't understand, little mortal. Every vampire in this chamber is now calculating how to use you to their advantage, how to turn you against Draven, or claim you for themselves, or eliminate you to prevent the prophecy's fulfillment. Your life as a free woman ended the moment you touched that stone." "Enough." Draven's voice cracked like thunder, and power rolled off him in waves. The air itself seemed to shudder. "Willow Nash is under my protection, claimed by right and oath. Any who move against her move against me directly. That has been true from the beginning, and remains true now. This convocation was called to verify the prophecy's authenticity, and that has been done. What happens next is Northern Bloodline's business, not a matter for collective judgment." "Is it, though?" Morgantha's smile was vicious, "because it seems to me that if this prophecy is genuine, if it truly shows the future of the Northern Throne, then it affects all of us. I propose the girl remain here, in neutral territory, while we determine the best course of action." "Absolutely not." "You don't have the authority to refuse. This is a convocation. Majority rule applies." Morgantha looked to the other courts. "Isabella? Zhao? Western Council? Surely you see the wisdom in keeping such a significant piece off the board until we understand what she represents?" Emperor Zhao spoke for the first time, his voice dusty with age. "The girl is not ours to hold. Draven claimed her first. Ancient law supports his right to protect those he's sworn to guard." "I agree," Isabella said. "Much as I love a good political complication, forcing the issue here would violate too many precedents. Let Draven deal with his own prophecy." The Western Council conferred briefly. Then their spokeswoman said, "We abstain. This matter doesn't directly affect our territories." Morgantha's expression turned venomous. "How disappointing." You're all so willing to let Draven consolidate power, to allow a prophecy to unfold unchallenged. Very well. But know this. She fixed those void black eyes on Willow again. I will be watching. And when you inevitably realize that Draven is using you, when you discover that vampire kings care only for power and not for mortal feelings, my court will welcome you. I protect those the other rulers cast aside. I'll keep that in mind, Willow said coldly, not backing down despite the fear racing through her veins. The first session ended shortly after, with nothing truly resolved but positions clearly established. Draven escorted Willow back to their quarters with half his retinue surrounding them, a protective formation that spoke to the tension now crackling through the underground city. Once they were alone in her chambers, Draven's careful control cracked. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough to hurt if he'd been human strong. "You were magnificent," he murmured into her hair, fearless and defiant. "I've never seen anyone face down Morgantha like that. I was terrified. But you didn't show it. That's what matters." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were bright with something fierce. "Morgantha won't let this go. She'll try other approaches, bribes, threats, manipulation. We need to be prepared." "Or we could just fulfill the prophecy," Willow said. "If I'm crowned and transformed, if we make it official, then there's nothing to fight over. The future is set." "You say that so easily, but you don't understand what you'd be giving up. Sunlight, aging, mortality, all of it gone forever. And for what? For a future the stone showed you? For me? Maybe for all of it. Maybe for myself." She touched his face, making him meet her eyes. "I've spent my whole life studying the past, feeling like I was born in the wrong time. But when I'm with you, when I'm in your world, it feels right. Like all that studying was preparing me for this. Like I was always meant to find my way here." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "If I transform you, it has to be for the right reasons, not politics, not prophecy. Because you genuinely want this life, this world. Because you want me, not what I can offer you. I do want you. I've wanted you since you gave me a choice in that archive, since you protected my autonomy even when it complicated everything. You're a vampire king, Draven, but you're also a good man. And the words caught in her throat, too big and too new. I'm falling in love with you." The kiss was fierce and desperate, full of everything they couldn't say. He backed her against the wall, his body pressing against hers, and she could feel his fangs against her lips, the barely controlled hunger in him. "Say it again," he demanded between kisses. "Tell me again." "I love you," she gasped. "I love you, and I want this, and I don't care if it's fast or crazy or I love you." His voice was raw, broken open with emotion. "I've loved you since you stood in my court and demanded honesty, since you looked at me like I was more than a monster. You've brought light into centuries of darkness, and He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "I don't want to lose you. Not to Morgantha, not to politics, not even to your own mortal lifespan. I want forever with you." "Then give it to me." She pulled him closer, offering everything. "Transform me. Make the prophecy real. I choose this. I choose you." "Not here," he said, but his eyes were blazing. "Not in neutral territory surrounded by enemies. When we return to my court, to safety, then I'll give you everything. I'll bind you to me in every way possible, and no force in heaven or hell will separate us." They spent the night tangled together, not quite consummating, but exploring every boundary short of it. Draven mapped her body with hands and mouth, learning what made her gasp and shiver. Willow discovered that vampires could be gentle despite their strength, that immortal patience could be the most exquisite torture. When artificial dawn came, they lay together in her bed, and Draven told her about the transformation process. "It takes 3 nights. First, I'll drain you to the edge of death. Second, you'll drink from me, taking my blood into your system. Third, you'll die and be reborn. It's agonizing, I won't lie about that, but I'll be with you every moment. You won't be alone. And after? What happens to who I am? You'll still be you, just more. Stronger, faster, sharper. Your senses will expand. Your perception of time will shift. You'll need to feed, but we can teach you control. And the bond between us," his hand covered hers over his heart, You'll feel me always, know where I am, sense my emotions. It's intimacy beyond anything mortal coupling can offer." "I want that," she whispered. "All of it." The second convocation session that evening was shorter, focused on trade agreements and territorial disputes between the Western clans and Southern Dominion. Willow sat beside Draven's throne, positioned as his acknowledged companion, if not yet consort. She could feel eyes on her constantly, calculating, assessing. Morgantha made no direct moves, but her presence was a constant pressure. During a recess, she approached with two of her court, Lord Thaddeus, the scarred envoy Willow had heard about, and a female vampire whose beauty was almost painful to look at. "Miss Nash," Morgantha said with false warmth, "I hope you're enjoying your time in Prague. It's a beautiful city, even for those who cannot see the sun." "It's fascinating," Willow replied carefully. "The history here is incredible." "Ah, yes, you're a student of history." "How perfect," Morgantha's smile sharpened. "Then perhaps you've studied what happens to mortal queens in vampire courts, how they're used, discarded, destroyed when they're no longer politically useful. King Draven's own mother, his human mother, who was transformed and crowned, was executed for treason when he was barely a century old. Did he tell you that story?" Willow kept her expression neutral, despite the shock. "He mentioned it." "Did he mention that she was innocent? That his father needed a scapegoat for a failed military campaign and chose his own consort? That Draven himself stood by and watched because royal duty demanded it?" Morgantha leaned closer. "Vampire kings care about power, little mortal, not love. If you become a liability, you'll meet the same end." "That's enough." Draven appeared beside Willow, his presence crackling with barely leashed violence. "Return to your section, Morgantha. This conversation is over." "Is it? Or have I simply given your pet something to think about?" Morgantha glided away, leaving poison in her wake. Willow turned to Draven. "Is it true? About your mother?" His jaw clenched. "The broad strokes. Yes, my father was a tyrant who valued power above all else. When a campaign failed, he needed someone to blame. My mother was convenient, and pain flashed across his face. I was young, newly ascended to the heir position, and I believed in the system. I thought court law mattered more than individual lives. I was wrong, and I've spent 2 centuries trying to atone for that failure. It's why I've never taken a consort since becoming king, why I've ruled alone. Until now. Until you." He took her hands. "I won't make my father's mistakes. I won't value power over the people I love. You need to know that, to believe it. Because Morgantha is right about one thing, being my consort will make you a target. There will always be those who try to use you against me. I can protect you from external threats, but you have to trust that I'll never become the threat myself." Willow squeezed his hands. "I trust you. What happened with your mother, that was your father's evil, not yours. You were a victim too." Something in his expression softened. "You see the best in everyone, don't you? Even immortal monsters." "I see the truth, and the truth is that you're nothing like your father. You've proven that every day since we met." The final convocation session was a formality, closing agreements, scheduling the next gathering in a century's time, political pleasantries that meant nothing. But as it concluded, Emperor Zhao requested a private word with Draven. They withdrew to a side chamber, and Zhao gestured for Willow to accompany them. The ancient vampire studied her for a long moment before speaking. "The Bishop." "The prophecy troubles me," he said without preamble. "Not because I doubt its authenticity, but because of what it implies. Valdivius was the greatest seer our kind ever produced. His stone would not show trivial futures. If it chose to reveal your face crowned before it shattered, then you are somehow essential. Not just to Draven's future, but perhaps to all of us." "What are you saying?" Draven asked. "That Morgantha sees this too, which is why she's so determined to either claim or eliminate Miss Nash. The Shadow Court has been growing in power, drawing in the dissatisfied from every bloodline. If they move openly against the established order, we'll need every advantage. Perhaps your consort is that advantage." "She's not a weapon," Draven said dangerously. "No, but she may be a symbol. A human willingly transformed, choosing immortality and power that represents hope, change, a future different from the stagnant centuries we've endured. It could inspire others, remind our kind that we were once human too." Zhao turned to Willow. You have a choice before you, young one. You can return to your mortal life, and the prophecy will remain unfulfilled. Or you can step forward into destiny and become something none of us have seen in ages, a willing queen. Choose wisely. He left them alone in the chamber. Draven looked shaken. I never meant for you to carry this burden. You should have remained just mine, not a symbol for vampire politics. Maybe I can be both, Willow said. Your consort and a symbol of change. Zhao's right if the courts are stagnating. If Morgantha represents a dangerous regression, then maybe what I represent is evolution. A bridge between mortal and immortal, past and future. You're asking to be transformed for political reasons now? I'm saying that my transformation doesn't have to be just personal. It can mean something bigger. We can make it mean something. She pulled him close. But primarily, I want this for us. Because I love you and I want forever. The politics are secondary. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and when they finally broke apart, his eyes were blazing crimson. Then let's go home. Let's end this convocation and return to my court, where I can finally make you mine in every way. They left Prague the next evening. The convocation officially concluded. Morgantha made no further direct moves, but Willow could feel her malevolent attention like eyes on the back of her neck. The flight home felt interminable despite vampire speed. When they finally descended back into the Manhattan court, Willow felt like she could breathe again. This place had become familiar, safe, home. Draven summoned his council immediately. Willow Nash has agreed to transformation and bonding. We'll begin the process tonight. Valentina nodded, unsurprised. I'll prepare the ritual chamber. Cassius, inform the court that we'll have a new queen by week's end. Seraphine, help Miss Nash prepare. The preparations were elaborate. Willow bathed in water infused with herbs that smelled ancient and strange. Seraphine dressed her in a white gown, simple and elegant. The color represents your mortality, she explained, what you're leaving behind. After transformation, you'll wear the colors of the northern bloodlines, black and silver. The ritual chamber was deep in the court's heart, a circular room carved from living rock with a pool of dark water at its center. Candles filled every niche, their light dancing off silver inlays in the stone. The council and highest-ranking vampires stood witness around the edges. Draven waited at the pool's edge, dressed in ceremonial black, the crown of the northern bloodlines on his brow. When Willow entered, his expression was fierce and tender at once. Willow Nash, he said formally, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, you stand before the northern bloodlines as a mortal, offered the choice of transformation. Do you come here freely, of your own will? I do. Do you understand what you will gain and what you will lose? I do. Then approach and let us begin. She walked to him, her heart racing despite her certainty. He took her hands, pulling her close enough that she could see her reflection in his crimson eyes. I love you, he whispered, just for her. Through all of this and what comes after. Forever. Forever, she echoed. He struck fast, his fangs sinking into her throat before she could tense. The pain was sharp and immediate, but it faded quickly into something else, a pulling sensation, like he was drawing her very essence into himself. Willow gasped, her hands clutching his shoulders as the world began to spin. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, her strength draining away. Draven's arms supported her weight as he drank, taking her to the very edge of death. When he finally pulled back, his mouth stained with her blood, Willow could barely focus. First night complete, he murmured, lifting her in his arms. Sleep now. Tomorrow we continue. She woke in his bed, weak but alive. Draven sat beside her, looking haggard. How do you feel? Tired, shaky, but okay. She managed a smile. 1 night down. 2 more to go. He offered her food, helped her eat, though she had little appetite. Tonight you'll drink from me. That's when the real change begins. The second night, she was stronger, able to walk to the ritual chamber under her own power. The witnesses gathered again, and Draven was waiting. This time he cut his own wrist, dark blood welling up. Drink, he commanded gently. Take my blood into yourself and let the transformation begin. Willow hesitated only a moment before pressing her mouth to his wrist. The taste was strange copper and power, cold and electric. She felt it burn down her throat, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Her body seized, trying to reject it, but Draven held her steady. That's it, he encouraged. Let it take root. Let it change you. She drank until he pulled his wrist away, and then the pain began. Every cell in her body seemed to be burning, rewriting itself. Willow screamed, unable to hold it back, and Draven gathered her into his arms. "I have you," he murmured, carrying her from the chamber. "I have you, and you're not alone. Breathe through it. Let it happen." The night was agony. Her body warred with itself, mortality fighting the invasion of immortal blood. Draven stayed with her every moment, cooling her burning skin with cold cloths, whispering encouragement, lending her his strength. By dawn, the worst had passed, leaving her exhausted but changed. She could see more clearly, hear sounds she'd never noticed before. Her skin had taken on a subtle luminescence, the first sign of transformation. "One more night," Draven said, looking nearly as exhausted as she felt. "Tonight you'll die and be reborn. It's the hardest part, but I'll be here. I swear it." The third night, Willow felt strange, not quite human anymore, but not yet vampire. She could sense Draven's emotions now, a faint echo of what their bond would become. His love surrounded her like a physical presence. In the ritual chamber for the final time, she lay down in the shallow pool of water. It was ice cold against her skin, scented with blood and ancient herbs. Draven knelt beside her, the council and witnesses forming a circle around them. "Tonight you die to mortality and rise as immortal," Draven said, his voice shaking despite his attempt at formality. "Tonight you become my consort, my queen, my eternal companion. Tonight we forge a bond that death itself cannot break." He bit his wrist again, let 3 drops of blood fall onto her lips. Willow tasted power and infinity, and then her heart stuttered, stopped. The world went dark. She was dying. Actually dying. Terror seized her, but beneath it she could feel Draven's presence, anchoring her to existence. His voice echoed in her mind. "Come back to me. Follow my blood. Let it pull you back." Willow reached toward that presence, toward the bond forming between them. She felt herself sink deeper into death, felt her mortal body begin to fail, and then felt something new ignite in her chest. Power, cold and eternal and utterly foreign. Her eyes snapped open, and the world had changed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more. She could hear heartbeats from vampires who technically had none ancient blood moving through ageless veins, could smell the mineral content of the stone, the chemical composition of the candles, could see individual dust motes floating in air currents she could now track precisely. And Draven, she could feel him like an extension of herself, his emotions and presence entwined with hers so intimately that she couldn't tell where she ended, and he began. "Willow." His voice was uncertain, hopeful, terrified. She sat up, water streaming from her white gown, and met his eyes. Her vision had changed. She could see the spectrum of his power now, the ancient strength coiled in his frame. And when she looked at her own hands, they were pale as marble, luminous and strange. "I'm here," she said, and her voice was different, too clearer, carrying an undertone of power. "I'm still me, but more," he finished, and pulled her from the pool into his arms. Around them, the assembled vampires knelt, acknowledging their new queen. Valentina stepped forward, carrying a crown of dark metal and silver thorns, the same crown from the prophecy. "Rise, Queen Willow of the northern bloodlines. Take your place at your king's side." Draven helped her stand, and Valentina placed the crown on her wet hair. It settled with a weight that felt right, like it had been made for her. Willow looked at her reflection in the pool's surface and saw the face from the vision powerful, unafraid, exactly where she was meant to be. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Over the following weeks, Willow learned to navigate her new existence. Feeding was strange, but became manageable under Draven's patient instruction. They fed together from willing donors who served the court, and he taught her to take only what she needed, to never harm unnecessarily. The bond between them deepened daily. She could feel his presence always, a comfort and a strength. When he held council meetings, she sat beside him, learning the intricacies of vampire politics. When threats arose, she discovered she had power, not just physical strength, but something else, something that made even old vampires pause. Valentina called it presence. "You were transformed by a king and became a queen in a single moment. That's rare. Most vampires spend decades earning their power. You inherited it, and it shows." News of her transformation spread through all the courts. Isabella sent congratulations and a trade offer. Emperor Zhao sent a cryptic message about destiny fulfilled. The Western clans sent curiosity and a request to meet the new queen. Morgantha sent nothing, but Willow could feel her malevolent attention like a storm on the horizon. The Shadow Court was not done with them. 1 month after her transformation, Draven took Willow to the surface for the first time since she'd changed. They emerged in a private garden atop one of Manhattan's skyscrapers, and she experienced sunset as a vampire. It was painful, the light burned even as the sun sank below the horizon, but it was also beautiful. She stood in Draven's arms and watched the sky blaze with color, understanding now why vampires mourned its loss. "I would give you the sun if I could," he murmured against her hair. "I don't need it. I have you, and that's enough." She turned in his arms, looking up at the vampire king who'd become her entire world. "The prophecy was right. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And where I'm supposed to be is with you," he replied. "Forever." They kissed as the stars emerged overhead, and Willow felt the future unfold before them, centuries of this, of them, of the love they'd found in the strangest of circumstances. There would be challenges ahead. Morgantha wouldn't surrender. Other courts would test them. But they would face it together, king and queen, partners in immortality. The prophecy had shown Willow her own face, crowned and powerful, but it hadn't shown her the love, the joy, the sense of completion she'd found. Those were gifts beyond any fortune-telling, earned through choice and courage and the willingness to step into the unknown. 6 months later, Morgantha made her move. The Shadow Court launched coordinated attacks on Northern Bloodlines holdings, attempting to fracture Draven's support. But Willow had spent those months building alliances, earning respect from vampires who'd initially dismissed her as a political pawn. When the attacks came, the Northern Bloodlines stood united, not just because their king commanded it, but because their queen had proven herself worthy of loyalty. Willow led defenses alongside Draven, her newfound power and strategic mind turning the tide of battles. The conflict lasted 3 brutal weeks, ending when Willow proposed a direct challenge. "Let Morgantha face us both," she told the assembled council, "king and queen together. If she wins, she gets what she wants. If we win, the Shadow Court backs down and ceases attacks for the next century." It was audacious and dangerous, but Draven supported her immediately. "My queen speaks with my voice. The challenge is issued." They met Morgantha in neutral territory, in the ancient Roman ruins beneath the streets of Rome. The duel was brutal. Morgantha was older, craftier, willing to use any tactic. But Willow and Draven fought as one, their bond allowing perfect coordination. Every move Draven made, Willow anticipated. Every opening she created, he exploited. In the end, it was Willow who struck the final blow. Not killing, she wouldn't give Morgantha martyrdom, but disarming, forcing submission. The ancient vampire knelt in the dust, defeated, and acknowledged their victory. "You were right," Morgantha said bitterly. "The prophecy showed truth. You are exactly where you're meant to be, strong enough to protect what's yours." The challenge ended the Shadow Court's aggression. Morgantha retreated, diminished, and the other courts took note. The Northern Bloodlines had not just survived, but grown stronger through Willow's transformation. A year after her change, Willow stood in the throne room beside Draven, addressing the assembled court. "We've faced challenges and emerged stronger. We've proven that change doesn't mean weakness, it means adaptation. The Northern Bloodlines will continue to evolve, to find strength in unity and diversity." The court cheered, genuinely loyal now in ways they hadn't been before. Willow had earned her crown through action, not just prophecy. That night, alone in their private chambers, Draven pulled her close. "Do you have any regrets?" Willow thought about her mortal life, the sunlight and simple pleasures she'd surrendered. Then she thought about everything she'd gained: love, purpose, power, and eternity with the vampire king who'd stolen her heart. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "The prophecy showed me crowned and powerful, but it didn't show me happy. I had to choose that for myself. And I choose this, choose you, every single day." "As I choose you," he murmured, "my queen, my love, my forever." They kissed as the underground city glowed softly around them. and Willow knew that whatever the future held, whatever challenges arose, they would face them together. The prophecy had been the beginning, but their love was the story that would endure. 2 years after her transformation, Willow had become a legend in vampire courts, the mortal who'd seen destiny and chosen to embrace it, who'd become queen, not through political maneuvering, but through genuine connection. Young vampires looked to her as proof that their kind could still evolve, still change. She and Draven ruled together, a partnership that strengthened the northern bloodlines beyond what either could have achieved alone. They traveled between the courts, building alliances, mediating disputes, showing that cooperation was stronger than conflict. And on quiet nights, when the court was settled and they had only each other, Willow would think back to that moment in the university archive, the moment she'd touched an ancient stone and seen her own face crowned in darkness. She'd been terrified then, unable to imagine how that future could be real. Now she understood. The prophecy hadn't shown her a fate to fear, but a destiny to embrace. It had shown her the truth she'd been too human to see, that she was meant for more than cataloging artifacts and studying dead civilizations. She was meant to live among the immortal, to love a vampire king, to become a bridge between worlds. The stone had shattered after showing her its vision, but Willow had forged something new from those fragments, a future built on choice and love and courage. The prophecy had pointed the way, but she and Draven had walked the path together, creating something more beautiful than any fortune-telling could predict. Standing beside her king's throne, wearing her crown of dark metal and silver thorns, Willow Nash, now Queen Willow Corvinus of the northern bloodlines, knew she was exactly where she belonged. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but the story was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning, and it would last forever.